Who has something to share from their weekend?
I actually went out and talked to people and got some of my business cards handed out over the weekend and delivered flowers for Mother's Day. So it was my first kind of out by myself day. It was great.
Love it. Love that. Hopefully everybody had a good Mother's Day. Hopefully, Mara, you got spoiled. Give everybody another minute to get in. Okay. I'm sure we will have some people joining us along the way. But happy Monday. We're here. It's 1 o'clock. Thank you, everybody, for showing up. Today is all about negotiate the deal. But first, we're going to dive into our contacts, our notes, how that went for everybody. And anybody's got
all right, enjoy.
Okay. So we're going to start off with check-in. How many contacts did you have? And we'll go from there. Heath, you want to start us off?
I'm just an interested observer today.
Okay, perfect. So what we do when we first start off is check in. The ideal ways to do business is to contact people, write some notes, personalize, and go in. And we do check-ins on a daily basis. So welcome. It's good to have you here. Heather, you want to start us off?
Been working at the construction site and having truck problems. I have been very busy and I have a lot of catching up to do.
Okay. Aisha, is that right? Oh, Aisha, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. I'm sorry, I had to unmute myself. Here, let me turn my video around. There we go. I was eating lunch.
hi.
I didn't think you guys wanted to watch me eat. So this is I haven't really been following along. This is only the second like I haven't started from the beginning. So this is only my second drop in. So I'm not even sure where you guys are at with the whole contacts thing. I haven't gotten to that point yet. I just did my
Okay.
orientation this morning,
Congrats.
so still in the beginning phases here.
Love it. Love it. Love it. Observe. What we do is we go through notes. Anyway, we just, how many contacts you get in a day. We like to have you have 10 a day. Add to your database. How many do you add to your database? And then notes, 5 notes. Some days are better than others.
What are the notes?
Personal notes.
What do you mean by
just-
5 notes?
Just,
Oh, about the person?
yeah,
like your
well, just
relationship to
about
them?
you're starting your business, looking to, you're in real estate, send out personal notes. And then
It's
along,
like thank you cards, like handwritten notes to people. So and it's
Okay.
10, 10, 10, and 10. So 10
Okay.
contact.
I
And
see.
that's all a goal. Like you don't get kicked out if you don't do it, but it's just good accountability to have. Sorry, Matt, jumping in.
oh, you're fine.
Like doing that every week. You you guys are doing that every week or
Every day.
every day?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a goal. So like if you were at market,
How do you
for
come up with
instance,
new contacts like that every day?
people you know, or
Yeah.
like if you were at the market and you were conversing with people that you were selling to and mentioning that you were in real estate, that would be a contact. But a contact, someone you've talked to either voice to voice, face to face, or like text message or messenger, as long as they talk back. So 10 of those, then you take those 10
Okay.
people and you'd put their information into your database and then follow it up with a thank you card or handwritten note, which would be like your contact.
Okay.
information.
So they sorry, there's some sort of really loud thing going on. Okay, I understand.
Yeah,
Okay.
and then you'd send them your business cards and then
Can you still hear me?
previewing 10 homes a week.
Perfect.
You mean the ones that are listed?
Yes.
Just like going through and find goes. Okay. Well,
Okay.
I think that the market thing is going to probably work out well for me to be able to talk to people. I was thinking it might infringe on my time, but well, sorry.
Oh no, you're good. I can't hear. And okay, so Leah, you want to check in?
I guess I have one quick question here.
Yeah.
Did they have to agree to be a contact, right?
What do you tell me? They have to agree to be a contact? Well, just you're letting them know you're in real
Right,
estate.
like you could like ask them like, hey, can I use you as a contact when you're taking their information, you can't.
It's whatever
It's like-
that looks like to you, but yeah, sometimes it's just reaching out and having a contact say, hey, I was just thinking about you. Let's see,
Because I do
How are
a
things
farmer, I
going?
guess I'm thinking about the farmer's market. Like if I them strangers and then give them my card, they aren't necessarily, I might not have the information to save them with.
no,
So do I ask them to maybe be my contact and maybe get, okay.
get their contact information. Yeah.
Yeah,
Name,
I was thinking about having
address.
some sort of contact maybe on a Facebook page, like a newsletter that you could join or something like that.
Yes.
But anyways, I'll figure that out. Thanks for the info.
Yes. Okay. Leah,
Yes.
how'd your weekend go? Got
It's-
out there.
Yeah, finally I've been able to like actually leave the house for, an undetermined amount of time to actually go out and see people and, just did the Mother's Day things because like I needed to get business cards out to my parents' house, and then like to my sister and some friends, that I haven't seen. Some of them I haven't seen in over a year. And just wanted to touch base and catch up with them. And so I saw about 6 people on Saturday and Sunday, which is a lot for me. And then I had also had the insulation company come out and give me an estimate, and I've got all that scheduled. It's going to cost more than I want to, but they seem like a really good company. And so I'm excited about making a professional contact and getting my
Hey, Lydia. is there a way
buying
to
packages and
take
selling
my turn?
packets put together. And I'm
Because I should be Jake instead of you.
Almost.
You want to.
Almost got a laptop figured out for stuff because my husband's laptop, it's his laptop, it's not mine. So I don't have anything on it because he doesn't want any of my stuff on it. So it's, I'm almost done getting my things put together.
Good.
So I can work more efficiently.
It's
Because
progress.
it's hard to work from a smartphone.
Although doable, yes, I agree. Very hard. Way to get in front of people.
Yeah.
Cameron.
Hi.
Hi.
Yeah, so although I haven't made any like contacts or put anything in the database yet, I am still really excited because I've made some really good personal progress as to where I finished my orientation and then I set up my Facebook page and then my Instagram page and my website. And later today is when I was going to start posting on that page, but I checked this morning and I already have like a few followers on that page that I set up that I haven't even posted on anything yet. So I was pretty excited to see that, like that people are actually like following and supporting me. So that was kind of fun to see. So yeah, so I'm just excited that I finally feel like I'm making some headway now because it was like a little slow and I jumped in a little late. And then I have my meeting tomorrow morning with my tech trainer.
Oh, very cool. So you're new into it also, but you're getting out. You're getting out there. You're doing the things to set up and get in front of people without being in front of them.
Yes.
Love it. Julie.
Hi there.
Hi. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good.
So I have 8 new contacts I added to my database, and one of them is a solid buyer, and we're already looking at places. And
well done.
Yeah, thanks. And then I had, it's only kind of like a half a contact. I had a lady reach out to me, possibly selling her house and buying another. So we'll see how that one pans out.
Very cool. Marissa.
Hi, so I made about 8 contacts over the weekend. Wasn't quite as many as I'd hoped, but I had family here. So I got 8 contacts added, working on writing note cards for them now. And then I set up a meeting to meet with a lender on Wednesday and meet someone new and add to my contacts.
Love it. I think the vendor aspect of things is very, when you first get into business, it's good to find those partners. Well done. Heather Hunt. Oh,
You have more than one Heather?
nope. Sorry. Already had you. Lots of work. Got it.
Yeah.
How about Natalie?
I haven't really counted how many contacts I made this weekend since I was kind of busy with the open house. And ironically, I think I made the most contacts when I locked my phone and my keys in my car on Friday. So I went door knocking in search of someone to let me use their phone.
That's a good way to do that.
Yeah, you're telling me.
Make the best out of a not so great situation.
Yeah, very, very nice neighbors in this neighborhood that I found myself in. They let me hang out in their back patio as I waited for the key guy to unlock my car for me.
Sorry, I'm not supposed to laugh at your expense.
No, that's fine.
I've
been laughing about it since it happened, actually, since I saw my phone and my keys in my locked car.
Perfect. Well, way to make the best out of a bad situation.
Yeah, I do what I can.
There you go. Jared. Oh, I think you're muted.
Just moving forward here. I made a couple contacts Friday and I haven't been able to follow up with them yet, but one potential lead for buyers, which was interesting. So that was good. And then this morning, I've just been really busy. I actually went to the office and finally got my Ignite manual if you can believe that. And then dropped off some extra paperwork I had. And I'm moving along here with getting ready to put together my announcement. And I've been making a lot of new contacts, friends on Facebook. So that's been going really good. And I've got just a list of stuff here. I'm still working on uploading my logo, getting to a contracts class. Just every day I'm busy just working on something new here and just plugging away at it. So steady as she goes here.
Okay, perfect. Noe.
All right, there you are. Lost you for a second. I was busy, had a couple of open houses this weekend. First one on Saturday was extremely busy. We had 27 groups come in, talked to a lot of people. And then I'm working on a customer right now who are looking to buy straight from the buyer, seller directly, so they're not looking to list it. So I'm excited for that. Crossing my fingers.
Very cool. Michaela.
Hello.
Hi.
I and stuff for me, like I made a cover letter to send along with my pre-appointment mailers and printed and bound a couple of pre-listing and pre-buyer appointment mailers to send out, and printed out my actual presentation notes, and I'm working on my scripts for notes, stuff like that.
Oh, very cool. Good progress. Dave.
Hi. I set up, or I had a Zoom meeting with a woman from Title, and that was really informative. And then I'm going to have another meeting this week with one of their media and marketing guys. But I felt like that was really informative. And then I also had 2 phone calls with Tracy Bell, the woman who was referred to us, the lender. And she is super sharp, and that was very helpful as well. And then I made about 5 contacts. So that's about it.
Good job. Sonia.
So I just had my meeting with Fidelity, and I got a listing kit for hopefully a potential lead. I'm supposed to call them tomorrow. Other than that, I've been just kind of trying to learn more and look at listing contracts and everything to be able to be ready if it goes through.
Oh, very cool. And then we got Jackie, she's driving. My check-in is an open house this weekend, obtained 1 buyer, sending out lots of thank you cards today, and still entering into command. Well done. Follow-up's the key. Follow-up's the key. Pierre. Pierre? I don't know if I got that right. Okay, did I miss anybody? I even got some of you twice. Anyway, so let's dive into today. Today is going to be all about negotiate the deal. And as you heard earlier, Mara is with us today. We all know Mara, productivity coach down in Eugene. She's been with Keller Williams since 2013. She's been the productivity coach since 2017. She's dedicated to her craft to helping others start and grow their real estate business. This is her 5th year on the ALC. This year, she is also the regional international representative. One thing I did not know, she's also the vice president in her spare time of the Springfield Board of Realtors. And she is actively looking for resources to always help other agents. Mara, are you there?
Yes, I am.
I didn't recognize you.
Like most of my face covered. Excellent. Thanks, Matt.
Yes. Happy Monday.
Yes. So for those of you that don't have your binders yet, just know that you can go in and grab them at oops, Matt, you made Michaela the host. I think I might need to be host.
Yeah. It switched on me right as I did it.
I am awesome though.
Yeah, right.
If anybody could handle it.
But all of the market centers do have Ignite binders ready for you printed out that has all the material for all of the Ignite courses. So feel free to jump into the office like Jared did today and grab those at any time if you don't have yours yet. Otherwise, if you would like to access the material and don't have it, you can go to kwtechhelp.com and follow along with that material today. But we will go ahead and get it started. I have the PowerPoint up, so I'm going to share my screen just to get us started with that.
Just a second here.
Slideshow. Can you guys see that? Perfect. So as Matt said, we're going to go over and negotiate the deal. We already talked about what contacts you've made, note cards, all of that. So we'll pass on and start on. We'll wait a little bit. We'll get started in the material and then we'll take kind of like a little break and let you do some contact making and note card writing for 20 minutes. So I'm going to come back to that. All right, get your head in the game. Actually, hold on. Sorry. I'm going to print out my instructor manual real quick so that I have it in front of me and don't have to look back and forth. Go ahead and open up to page 9. Let me go grab it off the printer real quick, guys. Sorry. Always forget that I can't look at my screen while I'm screen sharing on a different page.
Matt, can I ask a question since you're right there?
Yep, absolutely.
So my mentor said she takes her seller's disclosures with her to listing appointments and has them fill it out right there and then upload it. When you do that, can you upload you take a picture, scan it, upload it into Command? Or because I'm not going to upload it into zip forms at that point or DocuSign, right? Because it's already completed. So in order to have it recordable for my principal to look at, I just need to upload that into Command.
Yes.
Okay.
Or, yeah, it's going to be part of the listing contract.
Yeah, you wouldn't do it, upload it into Command though till it's signed by all parties because you can only.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. Sorry, I just asked. My mentor says she takes them to her appointments and has them fill it out with pen instead of on line. So I just wanted to confirm what the second step for that is.
Right, but then you have to have so if you're listing, the buyers have to sign it before you upload it into Command.
So you're the sellers signing it, and then once you have an accepted deal, the buyers get to look at the disclosures, and then they sign off and acknowledge that they have read them. And once they're signed off by both parties, then you will put them into the file.
And then before that, I just hang on to that physical copy until I get the deal signed. Okay, cool. Thanks.
Yeah, that's a lot of sitting there and waiting. I usually either email them to them and have them print it out and then collect it when I'm there, or have them return it to me after they've had a chance to fill it out, depending on how long you want to sit there for, because it's a lot.
I heard it's a good idea to have them fill it out while you're touring the house, like as an excuse to have them not follow you when you're checking out their property. Like, you fill this out while I check out your place.
Can.
Yeah, you can.
I use it.
Oh, go ahead.
I use it exactly like that, and then it's a gauge of how interested they are in listing with me. they already started filling it out and
Mhm.
they have a couple questions, then it's a good gauge to see that they're going to list with me.
That's what I was thinking. I like that.
Okay. So getting our head in the game for negotiations. So negotiations are an integral part of most real estate transactions. I would say all real estate transactions. In fact, they're so important that in 2014, National Association of Realtors survey of buyers and sellers negotiations ranked second in the list of what buyers want most from their agent, and ranked sixth in what sellers wanted most for their agent. So definitely super important. I would say now it's probably even more important because of the super fierce market we're in, that people are relying on our negotiation skills and offer writing abilities to see that through. First, there's a few areas in the contract that we negotiate a bit upon, right? Like first, it's upfront with the offer. So we're negotiating what the offer is going to be. And then it's during the due diligence period. So any inspection negotiations or repairs that need to be made. And then sometimes there's also a third negotiation point, which would be around the appraisal, if anything takes place there. So you'll do it more than once. All right, page 10, making it happen. As it says, you may not realize it, but you're almost always negotiating, right? So almost everything that you say to your clients or to the other party is going to be a negotiation. The definition for terms of negotiation for this is going to be bargaining, so giving or taking. Process between two or more parties, each with its own aims, needs, and viewpoints. Seek to discover a common ground and reach an agreement to settle a matter of mutual concern or resolve a conflict. So that's where our purpose is in negotiations. This shows you a fun little thing. So sometimes when we think negotiations, we always think like, hey, we're just negotiating with the other agent. A lot of times though, we're also negotiating with our own clients. Sometimes they need to reframe the way they're thinking about a thing, or be a little bit more realistic on the scenario. And so oftentimes we're going back to them and actually negotiating with our clients about what they will do or not do. Okay, so we're going to go over a common negotiation issue. I'm going to call on you randomly and try to negotiate with you, and then what? Hold on. Fun little activity, they say. We're gonna do it. So I'm gonna call on someone and I'm gonna throw you a common issue, and you are going to respond with what some of your ideas around what could be negotiated there would be or not be. So Noe, my buyers want a new roof. What's some ways that you think we could respond and negotiate to that?
All right, so is that the only issue that they found, the roof?
Yep, it needs a new roof.
Okay, and what is it exactly that they would like to do?
Well, I would like the sellers to put a new roof on the house before closing.
See how it tastes.
Okay, so let me talk to guys. Let me talk to my sellers. Sorry, the kids are eating right next to me.
That's okay.
Let me talk to my clients, the sellers, and see if this is something that they have time doing, or we might offer you guys a credit towards the repair.
Okay.
So I'll get back to you on that.
Excellent. So yeah, he brought up credit, which is a good idea. Sometimes, and it's kind of right, a roof's a really common one that will come up. It kind of depends on what the roof looks like too. Sometimes it'll become an appraisal issue and actually need to be done. But one way that roofs can be negotiated into to kind of make it a win-win for everyone is like sometimes they'll each pay for half. So maybe they say the roof's gonna be $10,000. Maybe they increase the price of the house by $5,000, and then the seller goes ahead and pays the other $5,000, total $10,000, but it would only cost them $5,000. So sometimes those are ways that we can come back, or maybe the roof just needs to be looked at, needs to have repairs done to it in order to. Usually mortgages will say, okay, the has to have a lifespan of 3 to 5 years in order to get a mortgage on a roof. Unfortunately, that's like a opinion of the appraiser, right? But then sometimes we can go back and negotiate that. Okay, I'm going to you guys know if we can get it to work. But that was fun. Thanks for playing, Noe. Let me go to, where's my screen? 2 more people. Okay. Can you guys believe that you guys are almost done with your Ignite courses this round, or some of you? Okay, we will see if I can. I always have trouble doing this, but let's see if I can get it to work. Okay, can you see the video? All the test is, can you hear the video?
Yes. I can see the video, but I can't hear it.
Did everyone not hear it, or only some people?
Can't hear it.
I can't hear it.
Oh, dang it. Okay. Any advice on what I might be doing wrong? Let's see. So that's playing there. I'm loud. That's loud. So it's not that. Let's try. Okay, tell me now. Oh, wait, hold on. Where'd it go?
I think that negotiation can definitely better at it than others. Josh Anderson from Nashville, Tennessee.
Can you guys hear
I've been
now?
with Keller Williams since 2006.
Yes. Yeah.
2014, we did about 200 transactions for about $60 million in volume.
I can't
I
see
grew
it.
up
I can't see the
on a
video, but
farm,
we
so
can hear
I've
it.
always
Can't see
seen
it.
my dad.
That's okay. You saw what he looks like, so just envision him speaking to you. And I'll let you know something in the videos actually for you to see.
Negotiating land and cows and horses, being the youngest of 4, and I'm trading and negotiating with my brothers all growing up. So I've kind of done it all the time. Some people are certainly gravitate toward it and are naturally better at it than others. But I think that negotiation can definitely be learned. I think there's a lot of skills that go into being a great negotiator. I think it's learning your client. Instead of kind of assuming that you know what's important to them, really asking a lot of questions and letting them tell you what they need or want, and then speaking to the other agent and finding out what's most important to their client. And there's some agents that just don't give any. When I have an agent that I'm dealing with that's very tight-lipped, I just keep asking questions, and they give me information that they might not have otherwise given, whether it's a divorce or a death, or it's just they got relocated to some other city. And I think if you're really listening and being intentional and purposeful about listening, You'll find out exactly what's important to them or what they have to have. In certain situations, you have to be creative. We're always looking for that next little tip to help our clients out and win the deals. One of the techniques that we've used a lot that's worked well for us is the escalation clause. For example, if the property is listed at $250,000, we might go in at $250,000 with strong terms, and in special stipulations, we might put in there that we're willing to beat the next best documented offer by $1,000 up to $263,000. And the best offer might be $261,000, so we end up getting it for $262,000. From a client standpoint, be willing to have a real conversation with your clients. It's not us just being realtors for them, it's us consulting and advising and really telling them, if you really want this property, here's what you have to do to get it. Everybody's got a different way of how they would negotiate. And networking with other Keller Williams agents around the country, the more you hear it, the more ideas you get. And then you end up gearing it towards you and what you think is going to work best for you and your clients. A lot of it comes down to experience, and I think the more deals you do, the more comfortable you get with it. If you can step back from every transaction and learn something, you're going to get really good over time.
Yay! Success. What are some of the key things that you heard him, or advice that you heard him give and talk about?
That thing he was talking about when you say we'll add $1,000 to whatever your best is that the escalation clause? Is that what that is?
Yeah.
Okay. And isn't it true that some listing agents will not allow it? Or they decide with their sellers they won't allow it? Like, how does that work? I've heard sometimes you can't, it's not an option.
So some agents don't like them and will give their sellers advice not to accept them. That is correct.
Yeah, that's a good question, Morris. My friend told me that he feels like you should ask if you're going to put in an escalation clause. How do you think most people view that?
I don't ask prior. I'm not going to open up an opportunity for someone to tell me no, or tell me an answer I don't want to hear.
Right.
But they sometimes will, if they do disclose in the listing, like in the private remarks, that they will not accept escalation clauses, then I will play nice. Some people say, okay, well, I mean, technically you still have to present whatever is written, so you could say no escalation clause and you could still write one. They technically have to present it, but that's not how we are going to win any friends. So I will comply with not doing one if they openly disclose that they're not accepting them. But if they don't do that, then I'm writing them all day long. And people have very controversial opinions on escalation clauses. I would say 9 times out of 10, in my opinion, the reason that people don't like them is because they either don't want to or don't understand how to do the math. And I've seen that play out actually really funny. Like even in some of the Facebook groups I'm in, they'll post like, okay, key example, if this is like, this is what was written into the offer, this is escalation clause, is the final price A, B, or C, and like amazingly people don't understand how to do the math and can't get it right. Which is, if you ever need help, let me know because I can help you with that.
Is it unethical to disclose that one of your offers includes that to another person? Like if another selling buyer's agent calls like, hey, do you have any of these? Like, yeah, somebody put in their escalations is up to this amount. Can you beat that amount? Like, is that ethical?
So there's definitely not unethical to say that you have escalation clauses or that you have like strong high escalation clauses or anything like that. People again have varying opinions on how much you can disclose or how much you're allowed to disclose. From my understanding, right, we always should deal fairly and ethically and honestly. So sometimes people feel like it's not fair for you to say like, oh, well, I have another offer at $390. Can you beat that? Now, in my opinion, those people, like the buyers aren't your clients. So your first duty is to get your client the best offer that they can. And as long as you're being fair and honest in that, but I try to keep it a little bit more vague. So I would say like, hey, we have really high escalation clauses. And then that way, you know, if they can't compete, they're not wasting their time, but I might not necessarily say we have an escalation clause up to 400. So either beat that or don't. Because I don't want people to get mad at me. But I just try to give everyone the same aspect or fair. Good question. Like, so scenario yesterday, I was receiving offers on a listing, and one of the clients or one of the agents called and said like, hey, we're going to offer this amount. Is that good? Well, as their escalation clause I had no cap. So it had no like top limit. So to me, I said, we have another one that is strong with an escalation clause, but I think you're going to be competitive, because it wouldn't have been fair or honest for me to say like, yeah, like he's like, should we buffer it more? It wouldn't have been fair, because even if I had told him, yeah, make it stronger, buffer yours more, the other one still would have beat it. So I was like trying to tell him, you're good. Ultimately, it'll come down to terms. And so that hopefully gave him what he needed to hear. And I think it did. But I try to be fair like that. It wouldn't have been fair. Like I could have been like, yeah, like we might want to be a little bit higher. Well, the other one would still beat him. So
what terms do you think will decide that situation for your client?
So one was as is and one was not. Like one completely waived they were both cash. They both had like a 3-week closing, but one completely waived their inspection period. And so
will they have an inspection just to make sure that the foundation isn't cracked or anything, or not at all?
Not the way that they wrote it. You can write things as is and still do an inspection, but they actually completely waived that. So they could still perform one if they wanted, like we would probably let them, but if they terminated due to it, they don't have that due diligence period, so we would keep their earnest money.
How do you feel about that? About their move to do it as is without an inspection?
It was smart, because we are willing to accept less money for that. It's less headache, it's less concern and worry. We could try, and it could go both ways, right? That was like 1,000% my client's call. I was like, you can do it either way. You can put them in backup. If something happens, we can tell this other one like, hey, you can do it, but it's as is, and we're not going to lower the price or credit you anything or do anything, because we have another backup offer. Or you could just go with the one that seems really solid and remove their ability to back out.
Thank you.
I've written into offers. It would take a lot for me to completely waive an inspection, but I'll say as is if I feel like the house is in really good condition and the buyers are comfortable with it. So I had a scenario a couple weeks ago where there was 10 offers or 12 offers. There's 12 offers. I think we were offer number 13, and they came back to us and said like, hey, you're top 2, you're actually not the highest. Like there was like a $20,000 difference in our offer to the highest offer, but we said we'd guarantee the appraisal price and to take it as is, and the other offer didn't. So they came back to us and was like, well, will you meet in the middle at like offer $10,000 more and we'll go for you? And we did that. So that gave my clients that opportunity to still get it because of those terms.
Cool.
So
can you clarify something about inspection? Sorry. So what is it called, or what's a scenario when you tell, like if you're the buyer's agent, you say, okay, you should totally have an inspection. I recommend you definitely have it, but you're not gonna, if anything really bad happens, we can pull out, we don't want it. But if only minor stuff happens, then we won't ask for repairs. So like I feel like that situation will come up a lot, because you should not have your buyer's people waive it, right?
Yeah, so that's how I'm writing probably about 90% of my offers right now. And what we're doing is we're still writing in the inspection that we have an inspection contingency, and we're just making it like, so it's really common to have like 10-day inspection periods. It's always been kind of the norm. We're actually lowering it to like 6 or 7 business days, and then writing in the additional provisions depending on the house and the house condition and the buyer. You write a few different things. One is either buyer will only address lender required repairs, right? It's not really fair if you have like a VA or a USDA or FHA buyer, and there might be things that come up that would be required for lending, then it's not really fair to sit there and say, oh, we'll take it as is, and then something gets called on the appraisal. You have to be realistic with what the scenario is. So say only ask for lender required repairs. You can say we'll only address major structural or safety concerns. So that's sometimes a middle ground. Or if they truly like, hey, my buyers are strong, they're conventional lending, I don't see anything on this house that I think would be an issue, then you can say inspection is for buyer informational only, and buyer will accept property in as-is condition.
And the specific verbiage for this is just kind of agent by agent, how you think it should sound, or is there specific, like, click this box for buyer will only address lender required repairs or whatever?
You write it in, but most people will do the verbiage as I said it.
Is there a script for that somewhere, or you know what I mean?
We can help, like I'll usually alter and help my coaching clients write as they're writing their offers, depending on what you want your intention of what you're writing to be cohesive with what you mean and what your buyer is wanting and comfortable with. But yeah, Matt can give that like altered feedback, or I can, or anything depending on what the scenario is. Most of the coaching clients will email me prior to writing their offer, or as they're writing their offer, but before they have it signed by their clients. So I'm reviewing.
Cool, thanks.
Yeah. Anything else that stood out to you about the video that you guys like really stuck with you as good advice?
Maybe you can speak to a little bit about just feeling comfortable about negotiation, and where you think of your role with your clients in terms of negotiating things.
Perfect. Yeah. So I would say negotiations are probably one of those things that over time, like in the beginning, it's normal to feel anxiety around them, or like, oh my gosh, we have to negotiate around this. It's going to fall apart. And then as you get more comfortable, those anxieties will fall away. I think one of the areas that agents go wrong in negotiations, or their mindset around negotiations, is feeling like the other party is like our enemy, right? Like we got to beat them, we got to win over them, we got to get something from them. I don't have that approach, and I personally really don't like it when agents do, because it can be really frustrating. Because while negotiations and the definition of them is that we might want something different or be trying to win something, we're ultimately both working towards the same goal. Like in the end, that seller wants to sell their house, hopefully, and that buyer wants to buy a house. So it's in everyone's best interest if we can get it to the closing table. And so I have a really high success rate of like, once something goes pending, we are going to see it through till close. And a lot of that just looks like what is fair, what is reasonable. And I'm not going to, on the listing side or buyer side, encourage my clients to do something that is unfair, unreasonable. Like sometimes people, I hear the mentality, and I've seen it, right? Inspection comes up and some agents are like, ask for everything, see what they say. To me, you're setting yourself up for a losing battle, right? Because then they're going like, you give someone a laundry list and defense goes up. I'm not doing this. They want all my money. They're trying to nickel and dime me. What do they think? They're getting a brand new house. And so their natural response is to either say like, I'm not doing anything, and they can take a hike because they're mad, or they'll pick out like the couple smallest things and be like, well, we'll do this. So when I'm working through, and it all goes on our end from setting expectations with our clients, right? To the seller, we're talking to them about, hey, you should expect to do some repairs that are reasonable or might affect lending or safety or structure, anything like that. That's reasonable. You're going to do it. And on the other side of it, when I go with my buyers to their walkthrough at their inspection, which I always intend on being there, you know, I'll hear everything that the inspector has found and brought up and talked to them about, showed them. And then at the end, we always want to set the expectation. So we go, okay, so now we have this information. What's next is I want you to go home and digest it and choose the 3 or 4 most important things that you want the seller to address. It's not a laundry list, but it still allows them to select some things and feel like they have some power and can get some things done. So I'm gonna pick 3 or 4. Now, if there's the way that I phrase it and help you guys phrase your negotiation repairs, if there's 3 different electrical things that need to be addressed, right? Like there's one outlet that doesn't work, and then maybe there's a double tapped breaker and there's a broken light switch. All 3 of those things I'm gonna phrase, that's 1. Right? Because we're just gonna have an electrician come in. It doesn't really matter if you have an electrician come out and do 1 thing or 3 small things. It's gonna not be that different. So all electrical concerns that you want to address would be 1 thing. If there was 2 plumbing leaks, that would be another 1 thing. But I phrase it, I write it that way. I don't say item 1, item 2, item 3, licensed electrician, licensed electrician. And because a lot of it's a mind game. It's all about the perception of how the sellers are seeing what you're asking for. So when you go 1, have a licensed electrician come out and repair the non-operable GFCI, correct the double tapping in the breaker, and replace the light switch in the bedroom. That's 1 sentence, 1 thing. But that's how they see it, even though it's 3 minor things. And so we only pick 3 or 4, and we make sure they're reasonable. And most of the time, people just accept it. Because they go, oh, they only asked for 3 or 4 things. That's pretty. Oh, and they're electrical or plumbing or safety or structural. Oh, that's all reasonable, and they just do it. It's not this back and forth like, oh no, give me more. So
what form are we using for this? For repair, asking for repairs?
For the repairs, you'll use the buyer repair addendum.
Okay.
And that's in forms. And then so yeah, that just, if you can get people to be reasonable and understand that, hey, we're all working towards the end result together, then you get a lot farther. If someone agent wants to play a laundry list game with one of my sellers, I'll just pick up the phone and call, instead of being like, we're not doing all this, are you crazy? I'll just pick up the phone and say like, hey, like, I got your buyer repair addendum. It's quite a bit on here. Can you like give me some insight on what's really important to the seller or to the buyer? And then I can direct my eyes to, when I'm talking to my seller, hey, sending you the buyer repair addendum, it's kind of lengthy. So I went ahead and called the agent, and they said, you know, what was really important was these 3 things. Do you think we could do those 3 things for them? And then maybe they can just take care of some of this other stuff, instead of us sitting there and going back and forth and trying to read their mind. Does that make sense?
It does make sense.
So some tips, they have some tips for you on page 12 in your workbook. It says, above all else, be professional. That's number 1, right? We want to be friendly. We want to like kind of be in it together with the other agent as much as possible. Remember your goal. So a signed contract, this is what you're driving toward, and it's what both agents and their clients have in mind, right? That end goal of, hey, we're gonna get this deal done. Control what you say to anyone involved in the transaction. So if you create anxiety in your client or other parties, you are reducing their level in negotiation. An example of that would be, I'm not gonna call the client, the other party, and say like, hey, my clients are pissed and we're going to walk away if you don't do this, right? That's not going to probably, they're immediately going to be like, what? No, we want you to walk away, or go for it. So we didn't get to the end result that we were looking for. Instead, we might say like, hey, like my clients really are concerned about this. What can we do to get it done? or you ask for a reasonable repair and someone says no, sometimes I'll call and be like, hey, can you kind of like explain the thought process that they like, why they were concerned about doing this? I'm hoping we can find some sort of resolution. If you ask more questions, sometimes the seller will say no, I'm not doing that because they don't have the money out of pocket and can't do it. And so then like I've been like, okay, so if like we identify an electrician that would be paid out of proceeds at closing, would that be work? Oh yeah, that would be fine. Okay, great. I have one of those. So we can do this. It allows us to kind of work together towards that end goal. Continually refer back to motivation. So remind your client why they want to buy or sell and help them reevaluate their request if they are becoming unreasonable. So again, going back to kind of negotiating with your clients. Sometimes people will get so hung up on this small thing. And sometimes it's like, you know, 50 or $100 or $500 or $1,000. And you're talking about $1,000 or less typically in a $600,000 house or $500,000 house. It's a small potatoes. And so that's sometimes where you have to kind of bring them back to earth and say like, hey, I know it's super frustrating. The good news is it's $500 or whatever it is. Out of this $500,000 house, it is not worth it for you to lose the house. So while it might not be what we want to hear, how can we get it to work, or how can we make this work?
Is the workbook the binder that you pick up at the office?
Yes.
Okay, I'm just double checking.
Yep.
I don't have that.
You can find it currently though if you go to kwtechhelp.com and go to the Ignite link, or the Ignite page on top. There is a student resources button on it.
Okay.
And we are in session 10.
You said it was KW what?
Help.com.
Okay.
Don't reveal too much. So listen more than talk. Keep your client's motivation close to your chest. So when you're calling the other parties, you don't want to give it all away. And that's where sometimes you can be more successful by asking more questions versus talking too much. I will say though, sometimes it is helpful. Like if you guys seem to be worlds apart, to explain a little bit of where your clients are coming from. Because sometimes, right, your clients might have legitimate concerns, or a good example of that might be, I've had clients that maybe have had like a bad experience purchasing before around a certain thing, or their friends did, right? Like, oh, my friends bought this house and there's mold all over it. So there's this little plumbing leak and I think they're really concerned about it. And the sellers are like, it's a small plumbing leak, like who cares? And they have this like deeper concern. And sometimes when you explain that, it humanizes it a little bit. And so they can be like, okay, well, if it meanders that much, or what about if we did this instead, and get through a little bit of it. And then don't be attached to the outcome. So you'll do hundreds or thousands of transactions in your career, and there is no way you can get everything you and your clients want all the time. Don't let it affect your mindset if a deal doesn't go through, or if your client doesn't act on your recommendation. Find a different win for your client. So this is where sometimes, especially in this market, it can be a little bit frustrating. Our clients are having to write super aggressive offers, very strong offers. And if they've either been in the market before, or they're new and a little bit nervous, or they have parents giving them advice on what's normal and what they should do, you can have clients not listen to you. And then that can be, right, like you're all of a sudden butting heads with your client. And you don't really want to get to that point. So I'll give information and let them know like what's normal or what to expect. But ultimately, I'm not going to fight with them or make them angry at me or frustrated with me. I will let them fail a couple times. And sometimes they need to do that. Sometimes they need to, you know, hey, this is my recommendation. I could see the house going for 340. So I just want to make sure you're really comfortable offering 320, just because what I've seen in the market, I do believe it could go for more. If they tell me, nope, 320 is our max, great. I will write it at 320. And if they don't get it, they're not mad at me. They don't think, oh, my agent didn't know what they were doing, or she couldn't get this offer accepted, because I was honest with them up front and told them, hey, I think it might not be strong enough. I wasn't like, yeah, 320 is going to do it. That's going to win our offer. And then it didn't. And then now they're mad. So just setting those expectations, giving your advice, but then ultimately listening to them. And usually after a time or two, they will come around to you. Like one of you guys know her, but she's in our office. One of our agents recently was writing her first offer for her first client, and they didn't want to do earnest money. And she told them over and over again, they had to do earnest money, and they had to lose out on a couple deals before they came around and did the earnest money. And then as soon as they did, they got a house. So, right, they weren't mad at her though, because she had told them, but she let them fail a couple times first, and that can be normal. Perfect. Okay, so common points of negotiation. We've talked a little bit about some of these, but we'll go through some tips, especially like making it relevant to today's market. During the negotiation process, price and terms are common points of negotiation. So, number one, price. While the sales price is the primary factor in negotiation, it is not necessarily always the bottom line. But any situation where a seller receives multiple offers at the same price, it is the terms of those offers, in addition to the buyer's financial position, that will determine which one wins. So we always know that price does matter some, but typically when I'm calling, so anytime I want to write an offer, I will call the other agent and say, hey, besides price, right? Because my clients are going to offer what they're going to offer. Besides price, what else is important to the seller? And that will allow them to tell me, oh, it's really important that they don't have to do repairs. Great, we'll add a line about minimal or no repairs. Or it's really important that they have a month's rent back to find a property. Perfect. Or the specific date, right? I had one recently where they were like, their kid's last day of school is June, whatever. And so they don't want to have to move before then. Okay, perfect. Those are simple, little easy things that I can alter that makes the clients happy. And maybe the other offers will do that too if they've called and asked for the same information, but if some agents don't do their due diligence and call and ask those questions. So we have already beat out those if that's important to them.
You're calling the seller's agent?
Yep. Okay. Anytime I write an offer.
Is this something you do every time you make an offer? Do you call them every single time and say that?
Yep.
Okay.
Definitely best practice. And then price. So we're having to kind of prep our buyers in this current market that most things are going at or above listing price. If it has been on the market for more than or less than a week, I would recommend that they're writing at or above listing price. We're not writing below listing price unless the home has been on the market probably for a couple weeks. If it's been on the market for a couple weeks in this market with no offers, it is overpriced. So that would give you a little bit of indication, unless it's like a super unique property. But most things are going at or above. Every market's a little bit different, but it's pretty common amongst most of our markets that things are going 10 to 15% over asking price. And so sometimes when I'm sitting down with our buyer consultations with our clients, I'm actually prepping them that, hey, if your max is 430, I am not going to send you homes that are listed for 430. It doesn't give them room to compete. So they actually have to kind of build that into their search. I probably won't send them homes that are listed for more than 400. I'm going to send them things under 400, because if I don't, then there's not enough room in their budget to compete at what those houses are going for in our market. So it'll be a slightly different in each of our markets. Part of the way that you can tell if you're going monthly to the Chris Soares does a state of the industry, and he's going through most of our markets and explaining what's normal in those markets. So that's really great information to tap into, or if you're getting statistics from the MLS reports or the TMO reports, like wherever you're getting your statistics, pay attention to what those numbers are looking like, because that will be helpful when you're prepping your clients.
How long does it typically take to write an offer? Like once you get used to the process, like 1 day, is it 3 days? Like how does that work?
Writing an offer, your first offer will most likely take you about an hour or so. And then after your first, I mean, you get quicker and quicker. Now it takes me about 10 minutes to write up an offer.
Okay. It just sounds complicated, but I just haven't gotten there yet. I was just thinking like with all the phone calls that you do and like kind of like the back and forth and just kind of feeling out what your clients want, you know?
Yeah, usually, I mean, that conversation takes a little bit more than like the 10 minutes to actually write it, but usually it's a phone call, listing agent. Sometimes I have to wait a little bit for them to call me back. And then I typically in my buyer consult or talking to the clients about the house and what their offers are comfortable with, I'm making most of the decisions for them based off of what needs to happen to get their offer accepted. But I'm of course making sure that they're comfortable with whatever price we're offering and then any terms that I'm adding. And so that's typically a pretty quick conversation too, of just kind of explaining some of those things to them. But a lot of it I've done up front in the buyer consultation for their expectations so that they know what to plan for.
Can I share my experience
Yes.
with writing my first contract this past weekend?
Yeah.
So it literally, I started the process at 9:30. Mind you, Matt and Heather helped me throughout the entire process. Heather more so, but I didn't finish like a lot of the moving pieces and calling and waiting for return phone calls from lenders, from the other agent, contact with my client. I finished up around, when it was all said and done, I felt done, it was 3 o'clock. And I started the process around 9 o'clock. It was my very first time. So obviously, like I said, Heather was walking me through each part of the contract, but there were some pieces in there that I didn't ask initially in the buyer's consultation that I had with my client because I didn't know. But typically, as far as the first initial part of the contract, it took about 3 hours. And then the other client, the seller's client needed rent back. So then we had to fill out another piece of the puzzle. So all in all, and then we was done with everything about 1 o'clock, but I was waiting for my client's lender to send me the pre-approval letter. And she wasn't able to get to her computer till around 2. She had it to me around 2:30, 2:45. I forwarded that immediately and asked for a response back once the seller's agent received it. And that was around 3 o'clock. At that point, I felt like I was done and was waiting for a response back to whether or not we was in the running. Now, we got out of the running because he let me know a couple hours later that they had 2 bids stronger than ours, and my client wasn't willing to go any stronger than the initial offer. We thought we put in a strong offer, but it wasn't strong enough. And when I say strong, so that give everybody an idea, the list price was $375. He had 2 off. We put in a offer for around $380 plus the rent back, plus we're not asking for any repairs, less than $500. Try to make the proposal look attractable, but he told me they had 2 bids north of $400K already. So it's like, yeah, my client's not doing that. But anyway, my first experience writing my contract, very long, very detailed. I know what questions to ask my client up front now, earnest money, down deposit, things of that nature. What can we do? Are you willing to accept less time on inspection days and things of that nature? So anyway, couple of hours if it's your first time. Plan on a couple of hours if it's your first time writing.
Your next one, Jamara, will feel so much more easy and smooth, because you'll know those questions to ask and have all that information, and then it's just like you now found the forms, so you just fill in that stuff. We will go through, so when we do writing an offer class, we go through it in detail too, which will help a lot of you if you come to that class and keep a copy of like what we go over and what we go through, because that will help you prep and be familiar with like what information you're going to need to plug into that form too. So that will be super helpful.
Are you gonna, is that class gonna go over the right questions to ask the buyers during the buyer consultation?
It won't go through the full buyer consultations. We have buyer consultation class, or we have 2 classes on buyer consultations,
Okay.
but it'll go through a lot of it for the offer.
Okay.
Specifically.
And then like with he was saying that he had to call to get the pre-approved letter from the lender.
Yep.
Was that something that he could, with more experience, maybe have asked the buyer to have during the buyer consultation?
No, we
Okay.
always want the pre-approval letter to match the property offer that we're writing. So for instance, the client might be pre-approved up to 400, but this property is listed at 350 and we're offering 370. We would want the pre-approval letter to say 370 and not show all our hands. And so it's pretty natural to, once you decide you're going to write an offer, either email or call or text the lender and say, hey, I need a pre-approval letter for this property to say this.
So my lender said he'll just send me a Word document with their pre-approval in it, and I can just delete and replace the amount for each individual offer. Is that rare?
That is rare. He must be very confident that they and you understand the pre-approval limits of that.
And so, and to that note, as far as the pre-approval letter, you're exactly right. My client is approved for $436K, but her budget, as far as what she wanted her mortgage note to be, she has a set price for that. And so I could have easily signed the overall pre-approval, but like you said, I don't want to show my hands and show that the seller's agent that we're putting in this bid and we have room to stretch it if possible. So just meeting the conditions of my client to know what their max is, that's where I had to call the lender back again and say, could you make this pre-approval for this amount and show that this down payment amount and go from there. So yeah.
Yep, exactly. Great job. Perfect. So any other questions about price in regards to negotiations?
I have a unique situation.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is apparently the seller and the renters already agreed on the price, and they were just looking for somebody to just do the paperwork, offered a flat fee. So in this case, they sent me the approval letter. It's already specified for the loan amount and for the actual price that they agreed on.
That's fine.
So yeah, I talked to the seller and he's like, yeah, I mean, we just want the paperwork. Everything else has been agreed on. Sounds like it should be very straightforward, right?
Yeah, hopefully. Yeah, and that's fine. Sometimes, people have a set price in mind that they're willing to accept. And if that makes sense to people, it can be pretty easy.
And in this case, I just signed the agreement with the buyer, correct? Like a representation with the buyer?
Yeah, you can talk to whoever pretty much contacted you first and make sure that they're okay with just them being represented. That could be the seller or just the buyer, either way. And then make sure that everyone's on the same page about whose best interest you're actually working.
So I just did that this morning, and I told them, well, this is what the sellers agreed to pay or wants to pay.
Yep.
So just know that, it's only going to be paperwork and I'll be representing you guys only.
Yep. And then with the seller, you would do a seller's fee agreement to clarify what he's going to be paying and compensating you.
Yeah. All right, cool. So I'm just waiting on that answer that the seller says, yes, let's do it.
Awesome. Great job. All right, terms. So the terms of an offer may be financial or time-based or both. When the buyer and seller can't agree on a sales price, the following 5 offer terms come into play, or even probably when they can agree to a sales price, I would say, on your offers. So one is going to be closing costs. So closing costs are the responsibility, technically the buyer's closing costs, right, are the responsibility of the buyer. And that would include their lender fees. So sometimes lenders have like a loan origination fee or a processing fee, or they'll call them a million different things, but they're ultimately all pretty much the same. And then there's prepaids. So on majority of mortgages, the current tax year is prorated for the homeowners' taxes. So the sellers will be, if they've already paid the taxes for the whole year, which is typically the case, they'll be reimbursed for the portion of the year that they're not paying or not going to own that home. And then the seller or buyer has to have pretty much a year's worth of taxes in an escrow account so that when they become due, that they are just paid, and then the rest accumulates out of their mortgage payment each month for the following year. And then they pay their year of homeowners insurance up front. So they'll have, that's the prepaids, is a year of taxes and homeowners insurance, and then they have the closing costs. That is the closing costs that are the buyer's responsibility. It, in previous markets, was really common for people to ask the seller to pay for closing costs, and sometimes it's still necessary for the buyer, right? The buyer might have their down payment, but do not have the additional funds for their closing costs, and so it might still be necessary for them to ask the seller to cover those. The seller naturally has closing costs as well. So again, those taxes are prorated. So if they're not paid yet, they would have to credit the buyer for the portion of the year that they own it. They also pay the real estate fees. So if the listing agent's getting 3% and the buyer's getting 3%, buyer's agent is getting 3% or 2.5 and 2.5 or whatever that is, that's negotiated and paid for by the seller. And then the sellers in Oregon also have to pay for a owner's title insurance policy. That's ensuring that they don't have anything lingering on the title that's going to follow the home. So they naturally have some closing costs as well.
So the seller pays for a title?
Yep.
What the buyer does? Do they both?
Nope. The seller pays for the title insurance policy.
Okay.
And then they split the rest of the escrow and title fees are split 50-50 in Oregon. So like the recording fee and title search and all of that. Now, if the buyer is asking for closing costs, it comes out of the seller's net. So an example of that is if they offer $350 and they need $8,000 in seller paid closing costs for the buyers, it's the same as offering the seller $342. Comes out just like anything else out of that net. So it's something to consider. Sometimes people will say, okay, well, I have a VA buyer, they have no down payment and they really need closing costs covered. You might want to add that onto the sales price if you're competing, or if you want to try to net like a full offer to the seller. So you might say that's listed at $330 and they need $7,000. You might offer $337 and ask for those $7,000. So it still equals the full listing price. The only thing that you have to be careful about, especially in this market, if you're competing or writing high offers or anything like that, is it still has to appraise for that amount in order for that amount to be generated to the seller. So if you write an offer for $337 because you need closing costs and you're thinking, okay, well, it's still a full price offer, so the seller's still getting $330, but it has to appraise for $337 in order for that money to be there. So that is one of the things to be aware of if you are asking for closing costs and you're adding on to the price to ask for closing costs. Usually in this market, $330 versus $337, your odds are pretty good. But sometimes, it might be listed at $330 and there's multiple offers. So you're offering $367 and they need their closing costs in that. That could be more of an appraisal struggle. So you might want to, go ahead.
I'm sorry. So in a normal regular market, and you request the closing cost for your buyer, and then it doesn't appraise for that to include that $7,000, but your buyer is still unable to come up with it, does the deal fall through?
It either falls through or the sellers eat that additional income, which is where right now in this market, it's less attractive sometimes to do the closing costs, even if the money, they're still getting the offer that they want. But if you're not the only offer they have and they have someone else not asking for closing costs, it's immediate kind of hit against you because it's a risk that they're taking. If it doesn't appraise, someone's got to eat the cost. And if the buyer couldn't come up with that money or part of it, I've had it happen before where it's been a while, but it didn't appraise and it included some closing costs that we might meet in the middle, right? Can my buyers go ask mom or dad for half of it, and half of the appraisal gap or appraisal difference to come up with their closing costs, and then the sellers come down the other portion? Any questions
So
about?
I had a quick question.
Sorry,
Go ahead.
How
Sorry,
is there a way to estimate your closing costs based on the price of a house? Like, is there a percentage?
The lender can give you that. The lender, they do vary a little bit by lenders. They're typically almost always under 3% of the sales price, but it's always good to have a conversation with the lender and actually find out how much they need, because you don't want to ask for more than you need either.
There's also apps. So there's like when I had that discussion with the woman from Tycor Title, they have an app that you can just plug in what the closing costs will be estimated to be based on the interest rate. So like she was even advising me, if you were to host an open house, you could pre-print based on the selling price of the house, what the financing would be if it was 5, 10, or 20% down. So the closing cost portion is more accessible than it seems. Is that correct, Mara?
It can be. I always say it's a strong estimate because what those apps, especially from the title companies, don't factor in is the different lenders have different fees.
Okay, yeah.
So there's going to be variance. If you're using it for a seller, the apps are super accurate because they're like, especially if you're going through Tycor Title, for instance, it's going to be pretty spot on with what their fees are, but the lender's fees can vary a lot. So I don't like to use the apps for the buyer side just because I don't want to ask for $8,500 and then this lender's fees are actually higher and now they need $9,000. Like it can create a little bit of gap, but
that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, if you're on a Saturday and you're in a pinch and you can't get a hold of the lender, then heck, that's going to get you a lot closer than nothing. So use it. But if the
You're just
lender,
kind of ballparking it, but it's not accurate. And
yes,
I see. Okay, good.
Yep, it gives you a
Good
strong
enough.
idea.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Some of it will also, like, sometimes they, depending on the buyer's qualifications, they're having them buy down interest rate or something like that too. So that can factor in a lot, but just depends.
Are you dealing with a lot of clients that it seems like in these different examples, people having to put money on top of what the house is going to appraise for is a whole challenge unto itself, right? I mean, if you have 20% to put down for closing costs and all that, but going beyond, it seems like unless you're wealthy in terms of the positioning of the purchase of the house, right?
Yep. It's something that's becoming more and more common, and I think it's going to unfortunately make it very difficult for some of the buyers and curve them out of the market a little bit, just because yeah, people sometimes have that price point like, oh yeah, I can compete and I can write 50,000 over asking and I have the down payment for that. But then the sellers are coming back and saying, okay, well, what if it appraises for $20,000 less? Are you going to pay the difference? And the people that are saying yes are standing out against the people that are saying like, no, I couldn't do that, which is a legitimate thing, right? Like a lot of our buyers don't have a lot of extra money sitting around that they could gap that. Luckily, I've had to put it in there a few times and no one's had to use it yet. Or if they have a very hefty down payment, then that's less of a concern, right? Sometimes people put like especially if they're selling one house and buying another, they'll put more than necessarily what they would be required to put down. So I had a client that was going to put 15% down, and she structured the loan to only put 10% down in case she had to do that appraisal gap, and then she still qualified for those numbers, but then ended up not needing to do the appraisal gap because it appraised above what our sales price was, so she was able to put more down, if that makes sense. But
Yes.
So quick question from my perspective, and I don't know if you might be or might not be able to speak to it, but if people are putting in, let's say, generally an offer price is coming in 10 to 15% more than the asking price, and the appraisal, for whatever reason, appraises for less than what the offer is, and clients are, let's say your client fills the gap, has the funding, how does that affect the overall market, or does it?
It's a great question.
Because I don't know. The only reason I asked is because isn't that going to raise the property value in certain areas if this continues to happen? I don't know. I mean, it may be a broader question, so I don't want to deter class a little bit. So just in general speaking.
Yeah, so I mean, there's a few different ways to look at it. One, if it's a long-term home that someone is looking for, it ultimately, they're going to get it back. Like, it's going to catch up, because if you looked at, and this happened to me personally, right? What I sold my house in August, and what I sold it for versus what it would sell for now, there's probably a $70,000 difference. So, and that's like in 6 months. So we're appreciating at such a rate that I at first was like appraisal guarantees, appraisal gaps, waiving appraisals, like, heck no, I'm not doing that. But then if you look back at the math, if it's going to be where they're like, if they're paying 10,000 over the appraised value, it's going to be there in 2 months, 3 months, 6 months anyways. Heck, if it slowed down and it took a year to get there, right? We've appreciated like 17% in the past year. So if they paid 10% over and guaranteed all that, they'd still be there in a year. So as long as you're working with a buyer that intends on being there for a few years at least, it's going to be less of a concern than someone who's like, I don't know, we might move to Texas next year. Like, oh, well, we're probably going to be a little bit more conservative.
Okay.
And ultimately, the value is what buyers are willing to say or pay. So we sometimes as agents struggle to find comps, because when we look at comparable homes sold, we're actually looking at what the market was 2+ months ago, because they were all looking at comps, and then all of those actually probably sold over a listing, and now that has to record. But it's showing us what the market was a couple months ago. So it's kind of a little bit natural for these homes then to be listed a little bit lower, because us agents are like, well, these are the comps that we have. I can't tell you what this one on the market today is selling for, because no one's going to tell me how many offers they got or how much over asking it was. So we're pricing our homes, and then the market's continuing increasing with competition. So they're selling over, and that will kind of naturally catch up. But if I have say I have 6 offers and 5 of them or 4 of them are 30,000 over asking, well, that's market value. And that's funny, because it's what we'll see. We'll see when we get multiple offers, we'll see a grouping of them that are all kind of similar at that top price. I had 9 offers on a listing recently, and like the top 5 were all pretty much within a few thousand of each other. So that tells me where the market is, and then luckily it appraised. But if it hadn't, like if we had an appraisal issue, that kind of, as agents, lets us go back to the appraiser and say like, hey, we had 3, 4, 5 people that were all willing to pay that for that house. That is the value of that house in the eye of the consumer.
You don't talk to the appraiser after though, right? Wouldn't you go to the appointment and show him those comps at that point to help him get to the number that you want?
You're not supposed to. Some people can and try to, but you're not supposed to talk to the appraiser prior. Sometimes people will go ahead and like leave the comps in the house for them to see, or like I've heard of some people giving the appraisers like a spreadsheet of the different offers that they received. But you're technically not supposed to influence that appraisal at all. And so sometimes appraisers will get very bent out of shape if you try to give them too much information or kind of snub you. It's also kind of, sometimes appraisers take it as you're telling them that they don't know how to do their job.
Yeah.
That
But so you would then talk to them afterwards to see if you can get them to adjust their appraisal value, or like what's
only
the
if there's an issue. So if there is an issue and it doesn't appraise that way you expected or felt like it should, then you can submit comps and information to them to see if they will alter it.
It's sort of like an appeal process or something.
Yep.
So they can alter it then? They can adjust it after?
If they agree. Again, it depends on the appraiser, because sometimes you're telling them that they didn't do their job right. But sometimes it's like, oh, well, you didn't include these comps? Like, did you see these ones that were very comparable? And they might come back to you and say like, no, those don't fit within our parameters and I'm keeping it. Or they might say like, yep, you're right. Like there's some reasonable data here to take into consideration and we'll up it a little bit. Perfect. So closing date. So when the seller has a very specific time frame for moving, the buyer has the upper hand and can leverage this by being more flexible with the closing date and less flexible with other offer price or in regardless to. So that's one of those reasons I always call and ask where the sellers are going and what if they have any ideal timelines or anything like that, because we can do things like offering, closing and then offering a week rent back for free, or that weekend to move out, or coordinating around, if they're buying a house and that's closing on a specific date, making sure ours closes at that date or before, or depending on what they're looking at. Especially right now, one of the concerns of sellers is being able to identify and find a property to purchase. So people are wanting lengthier rent back times to make sure that they have that extra time to go shopping and get a house and not be homeless in between. So being flexible with those terms and timelines could definitely sometimes matter more than price or as much as price. But if you have two prices that are similar, then terms are timeline's going to matter for sure. Conveyances, so that would be what they're asking for to stay with the property, right? Like, are they asking for appliances? Are they asking for the hot tub to stay? Are they asking for furniture to stay? I usually try to keep it as clean as possible. Most people want to ask for appliances, but if my buyers don't care either way, I'm leaving it out right now, right? Like if someone keeping their fridge gives brownie points, then like great, or we'll worry about it after. There was one recently, I had a pool and the listing agent was like, it can stay or go. And my client's like, I don't care. So I'm not putting in the offer because I don't want them to say, oh, well, these people want our pool and these people don't, or these people want us to remove our pool and these people don't. Like, we do not care what you do. So whatever you want, that is fine. Earnest money and option fee. So one of the ways that you can make your offers more attractive is by increasing the earnest money deposit. It has always been very common or popular in the industry for 1% to be the typical earnest money amount. So if you had a house for $300,000, that would be an earnest money of $3,000. But one of the ways that you can strengthen your offer currently is by increasing that. So you could double it, make it $6,000 or $9,000. Some people are getting pretty bold and doing earnest money amounts of like $20,000, and I have seen that win people's offers a few times, right? If they have a hefty down payment, really putting a hefty earnest money. The only thing that I would say, like, don't come back and yell at me if it happens. I like to keep my earnest money deposits below $10,000 because $10,000 is the limit for small claims versus a major lawsuit. So if something were to happen, right? Hopefully it's rare, hopefully it never does. But if something were to happen where there's a disagreement about where the earnest money should go, and it was $20,000, it'd be a lot more of a headache than if it was $5,000. You're also gonna have people who are like way more mad and willing to fight over that as well. So I keep them below 10,000, but that is my personal preference of safety for my clients. But I've seen offers win for doing more. But I do typically do like 2% instead of 1%.
I have a question about options. If you are representing a seller or buyer and the result is an option to wait for 6 months, how does that, this is an incredibly selfish question, I can appreciate that. How does that impact your commission?
Anything that was agreed upon at that time of execution, so you'd still be paid a normal commission.
Would it be the same? And would it come at the point of, at the time the option contract is signed, or at the time when the sale takes place?
Typically when the sale takes place, so like when money exchanges hands. Now, where that would be different is if like we're doing a seller carried financing, then at the time of execution, you're getting paid versus you're not getting paid like when the seller's fully paid in 20, 10, 5 years. But usually that comes like seller carried financing still at least has like a large lump sum down payment, so they still have money to pay you. But seller carried financing is rare these days, thank goodness.
I feel like this is kind of a dumb question because I feel like I learned this already, but the earnest money, what is that the credit for again at the end? Like, I know it's to hold on to the house and everything, but then how is that credited?
Yeah, it's their skin in the game, and then at the end, it either goes towards their down payment or their closing costs. So if there's no down payment, it'd go towards their closing costs. If you have, like I've had it where people didn't have a down payment because they were like USDA or VA or down payment assistance program, and then they also had their closing costs covered by the seller in negotiations, then they'd actually just get the earnest money back at closing. But otherwise, it's credited towards their costs.
I don't really understand the purpose of it though. Like we say that, oh, it's their skin in the game, but when you tell your buyer, oh, I can get it back for you with all these contingencies. So like in what instances would the seller actually get to keep the earnest money when the deal doesn't go through?
If a buyer does something stupid. So do you remember the when I did the listing presentation class and I had like all the buyer shall not quit their job, buy a car, rack up charges. You do any of those things to like, you're losing your earnest money. So yeah.
Because you mean if their financing ends up falling through and they can't qualify for the loan anymore?
On a fault of their own.
Mm-hmm.
So if there's like some surprise judgment that they didn't know about comes up and they can't finance, they're going to get their earnest money back. But if they went and spent their down payment or went and purchased a new car without permission from their lender, or quit their job instead of getting fired, it's one thing. If you got fired, you get your earnest money back. If you quit, you don't get your earnest money back.
Is that it though? I mean, from a seller's perspective, I feel like I don't care about how much earnest money you're giving me because it's just going into the down payment anyway. I'm not going to see that.
You're going to see it, but it's someone's a lot less likely to be stupid if they have $10,000 on the line than if they have $2,000 on the line.
There you go.
So it's showing the seriousness of that buyer. It's also like you only get it back if you're walking away during those contingencies. So if you're saying, okay, well, we have a 5-day inspection contingency versus a 10-day inspection contingency, then that's half the time that they would be able to walk away and get that earnest money back.
Are you finding that your sellers do care about this earnest money? Like, is that a major deciding factor in comparing offers?
It's definitely weighed in where like 2 or 3 offers are similar and one of them has higher earnest money. It definitely shows that they're more serious. I've also though, like not me directly, but helping coaching clients decipher different offers. I've had coaching clients have clients leave thousands of dollars on the table over how much earnest money was being deposited because they felt like the sellers were, or the buyers were that much more serious and committed.
Interesting. Cool, thanks.
And then last is repairs. So most offers are contingent on the outcome of the home inspection and necessary repairs. So that kind of, we touched on this a little bit, but you could either say you're taking it as is, you could say you're only going to ask for lender required repairs. You could say you're only going to address major safety concerns. And then of course, regardless of what was said, or whether you said anything at all, once you get to the inspection period, you have those repair negotiations. Sometimes people will say, like they want credits instead of repairs actually done, and that can be done as well. So for instance, say, hey, the seller doesn't want to perform any repairs or pay out of pocket for repairs to be done or take on that responsibility. They might say, okay, well, we'll credit you $2,000 instead of doing these repairs. And then you would write that up in an addendum, but that credit would go towards their closing costs. So it's reducing the amount that they're paying in their closing costs, and then they actually have, you know, more cash left over at closing to then go take care of the repairs themselves. So those can be handled in various different ways as well.
So after the inspection period is a common time if something came up that the buyer would get out.
Yep.
Is that probably the most common time that the buyer would just terminate the contract?
Yep.
Mm-hmm. And what are situations that you see where people are like, whoa, no, I don't want this house? Foundational problems.
Yeah, foundations are a big one, because sometimes even then if they're like fixed, it's like almost could be a tainted perception of the house. Yeah. Like other ones are, sometimes there's just so much, like there's a lot on that inspection report, and they're just like, there's just too much. So I feel like I'm buying a bad apple, or like even if they repaired 5 of these things or 10 of these things, there'd still be a whole laundry load of things I have to do, or like sometimes it can just be overall overwhelm.
Yeah.
Or if they, like, the inspector feels like a lot of things were kind of like DIY and not done well and kind of patched together, then sometimes that runs in the buyer's heads of like, what are we not seeing that might not really have been done to professional standards? Like these sellers just seem to like to patch things together on their own, and none of it's done very well, and that can raise concerns as well.
Yeah. There's a house on the corner by me that was abandoned for 30 years. And it's this big, beautiful house on the corner. And then someone came and remodeled it, and it looked gorgeous. So it sold about 7 months ago for like about $870,000. And I'm good friends with my next door neighbor. She told me that the woman came over. 2 women bought the house. They bought it because it seemed so remodeled so well. Well, in their living room, a giant crack split the basically hardwood floor. And they were like, whoa, what is going on here? The person who flipped the house put a concrete facade on the outside of all of the foundation, even though it was cracked. So they knew it was cracked and they tried to cover it up, which just seems crazy to me, you know?
Yep. Yeah, it's awful.
So do you have to get a, because I mean, it seems to me like once you've had an inspection done, you know what's wrong with your house. So let's say you had an offer, and then, the buyer walked out because he had something wrong with your foundation. You have that inspection. And so next time you have an offer, you show that same inspection, or you have to get another inspection again? Like, do buyers always want a new inspection, or?
It's mixed. You don't always have, so in Oregon, you can't send the listing agent or the seller the inspection report unless it's asked for. So sometimes they don't have it, or don't know what was on it or what scared the buyer away unless they want to have it. If you ask for it, then the buyer has to give it to you. So kind of up to once you know what's wrong, you have to disclose, like you said. So you might ask for it, might not ask for it, depending on what the seller's willing to take on liability wise or whether they want the disclosures. Most of my sellers are like, yeah, I want to know what's there. And if it's a concern, because we, again, would need to address it for a different buyer, could come up again. So might as well know what we're up against. And then it depends on who the inspector was, how recently it was done, whether the buyers want to do the same, like have their own inspection report or not. There's not all inspectors are equal in town, and some just make things sound really nitpicky and scary and others don't. So it just kind of depends on who does it. Some people are more known for missing things. But I always put that up to the buyers, like, hey, we have this one, it was done 2 months ago. Do you want to have your own or not?
Okay, so you can show them the inspection, or you just kind of go by, it's a verbal thing, like, oh, I heard that, you know, the owner had an inspection and it has something wrong with the foundation, or.
If you have the inspection, you should go off the inspection, but if they don't have the inspection, it was just verbal, then you'd go off that. So it kind of depends on what the seller has.
Okay.
The seller has to update their disclosures though, right? If they do find out anything from the inspection and that deal doesn't go through, and the next offer they have, the next set buyers would get to see updated disclosures.
I wouldn't necessarily update the actual disclosure form, because that's still what the sellers knew and the seller's like level of knowledge, but I would include the inspection report. That was, if we had it, then I would include the inspection report. So I wouldn't necessarily have them go back and alter their answers based off of the inspection, but I would disclose the inspection.
Okay, but so if you're the listing agent and your first offer falls through because the buyers walked out because of the inspection, when your next offer comes in, and you don't have to let them know anything
you
about
have to
that,
let them you have to let them know, but I'm not going back and changing what their answers were to their property disclosures.
But I mean, if you don't have the actual inspection report, you just heard from that previous buyer that we found out the foundation's cracked, you can just verbally then tell the new offer. That's what you're saying? Okay.
Yeah, because my clients didn't, it's like not their professional opinion that they're representing. So, and sometimes inspectors find things or have opinions on things that are not like, right? They might say, oh, you might want to have this foundation checked out, and then you have the foundation checked out and it's fine. So I'm not going to alter that.
As the listing agent, you don't mention it at like future open houses or before offers are received. You wait until offers come in, and then.
No, I would talk to the agents about it, but I wouldn't say like, oh, there's a foundation issue if it hasn't been checked out by a professional. I would say, hey, they said their inspector raised some concerns about the foundation, so buyer might want to have that checked out.
Okay.
Yep, always want to disclose, but you don't want to alter the documents. Perfect. Any other questions about repairs or repair negotiations? Perfect. So 3 P's on page 14. Prepare, present, and position. So when you are going into the negotiation process, you're going to know your goal. So have a clear goal of what like winning of that negotiation would look like and how you would come to that agreement. You're going to know your client, so have an idea of what your client would be comfortable with, would not be comfortable with, and that way you can kind of have a fluid conversation with the other party about reaching a endpoint. Think ahead, so you might want to try to anticipate what they might want out of the negotiation or objections that might come about and what your response to those would be. Right? Like if you are talking about negotiations and you think they may offer a credit, would your clients be okay with a credit? What credit would be reasonable? Like have a little bit of an idea of what you're looking at, and then set clear expectations. So prior to meeting with the other party, set clear and realistic expectations with your client, and then under promise and over deliver. So for instance, sometimes say my client's like, hey, I want a new roof. The roof's bad. I want a new roof. We're going to use this example again. I will tell them, hey, we'll ask for a new roof. Just so you know, it's really common sometimes for them to decide that they're going to split the cost of the roof because, hey, they got to experience it and use it for the last however many years they've owned the house, but you get the full life of the new roof. And then that's going to help you when you go and sell and you're living there. You're not having to worry about replacing that roof again. So sometimes it's reasonable to split it. And this is how that might look. That way, then we go ask for a new roof. If they say yes, sweet. If they come back and say no, we'll split it, great. You've set that expectation up front and they'll be more likely to go for that than if you didn't. But the line in the sand might be, hey, we're absolutely not accepting nothing for the roof. So know your expectations. Any questions on that?
I did have one question earlier. You said that as a buyer's agent, you will call the listing agent and ask if there's anything that matters to the sellers. As a listing agent, if you know that that's a question or there is something specific, would you put that in your private remarks just to like make it so you don't have to get those calls from agents so much? Like, is that due diligence on the listing side?
Not necessarily. I like just having that open communication and building that relationship because that's going to matter a lot. If they think that you are going to be great to work with and it sounds like your clients are great and you've had some open dialogue, then that's going to make your, when they present your offer, hopefully win you some points. I have seen small things be put into the private remarks more commonly, like, hey, they want to close June 15th and have occupancy till June 30th, or hey, they want to not close, they want a 60-day rent back or something like that. So if something like super small and simple, then you can go ahead and put it there. But I like receiving those calls. It also gives me an idea of who's doing their homework and going to have good communication throughout the process versus who's just throwing offers out there and hoping they stick. Perfect.
So are you saying that when before considering the offers, sometimes you'll make some phone calls to the buyer's agents to ask some of those questions to also try to weed out the serious offers from the non-serious offers?
Yeah, if I'm the listing agent, I'm going to take into consideration the offer, the buyer's agents that called me and spoke to me about what my sellers are looking for or asked about terms and questions and how many offers there were and all of that is going to stick out more to me than the ones that just like shot over an email with an offer. I'm obviously still going to present them all in a factual manner, but that gives me some cookies for thought. If offers are similar, I'm like, hey, this agent called me, they said, or sometimes they'll write in, right? Like, oh, we wrote it, you said you wanted to close 15th, so we gave you a closing date of the 15th and we gave you a week rent back, but we're flexible on that. Well, great, now I get to tell my client, hey, they're pretty flexible. So if this one that has 2 weeks rent back is looking more appealing to you because of the 2 weeks, but this one's price is higher, they'd probably give us 2 weeks. We just asked, they said they were flexible. Let's just go back to them and ask for the 2 weeks. And so that allows that open dialogue. And I want to have that on both ends for my buyers and for like, right? I don't care if you leave the pool or take the pool. If it's easier to leave the pool, leave the pool. If you're attached to the pool, take the pool. I didn't put it in my offer, but I'm going to include that in our dialogue. Hey, do whatever you want with the pool. And that way it's not working against us.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Okay, presenting your offer. So we've already talked about a little bit of this. Yes, Jackie, have a good day. Call the other agent. So you want to open that dialogue. Pay attention to nonverbal cues. So sometimes if an agent's not giving me the time of day regarding our offer, sometimes that's a clue to me that we're like nowhere near where we need to be or what is competitive with that offer. So I might ask more questions of like, hey, how are we looking? Are we in the game? Are we close to what your other offers are? You can ask, questions like that. Once you present an offer, just keep quiet. So sometimes letting the other person do most of the talking is the most powerful negotiation technique because of what they will reveal. So again, asking questions and kind of encouraging them to talk more. Listen carefully to what is important to the other party. Stay calm and relaxed. Focus on customers' needs. And that would definitely come into place in some of the negotiations of repairs. And then give your offer. So be confident and committed to your offer as you present it. Avoid indicating to the other side if you believe it is less than a great offer for them. All right, page 18. A lot of what we do, this goes over nonverbal cues. So you can spend a few minutes kind of working on this. In the time allotted, write down as many nonverbal cues, so body language, tone of voice, or rate of speech as possible that suggests the negotiation is going in a positive or negative direction. So let you guys do this for a few minutes. And I'll be right back. All right. What are some positive nonverbal cues we are coming up with?
Smiling is always a good one if you're face to face. They
Perfect.
seem like they're actively listening to what your offer is. And I guess a verbal one would really be they're like asking questions.
Yep.
So it wouldn't be a nonverbal one, but.
Awesome, great. What are some positive on the phone nonverbal cues?
I think it would be the tone of their voice. You can tell whether they're receptive to what you're saying or they don't like what you're saying.
Absolutely agree. Perfect. And opposite side. So what are some negative, like face-to-face nonverbal cues?
No eye contact.
No eye contact.
Oh, go ahead, Heather.
No eye contact.
Yes, exactly. Not paying attention. What were you gonna say, Aisha?
I actually said the same thing.
Oh, perfect. Wow, on it. Cool. And then negative on the phone. What would we pick up from there?
If
It
they
said
cut
short
you,
answers.
Or yeah.
getting cut off.
Yep, not actually listening to us, shortening the answers, monotone, flat voice, or like maybe being really slow speeding, right? Like you might say something and they're like, how do I nicely say this when I'm in conflict? Like, you can pick up on some of that. Good, awesome, great job. Perfect. So they have some cool on page 19, some identifying tactics and counter tactics. Nibbling. Once your client has agreed upon your major concession, the other party will start nibbling for additional smaller concessions, right? Like, you said you do this. Oh, well, can you just throw this in too? Or while the electrician's there, maybe you could have a look at this as well. So this says one of the counter tactics to that might be stop nibbling from happening to you by nibbling back. So ask for a concession in return before agreeing to any further concessions. Like, okay, we'll do that one thing. And can you send us over a release of contingency then for that or something like that, right? So they're not going to do anything additional. Or I've had people, like someone was asking for smoke detectors to be put in. And then they're like, yeah, well, while they're putting it in, can you have them put in the combos, which are like the smoke and CO detector combos. So that would be not necessarily like a requirement, but kind of like a little bit of an upgrade to have those as combos. And so my sellers are like, yeah, great, if you pay the difference. Smoke detector is $15, combos are $40. So it's $25 difference. How many would you like combos? And that kind of puts them the ball in their court. Another tactic's hot potato. So the other party tries to pass a problem on to you. For example, the co-op agent tries to pass all closing costs to your client because their client can't afford them. So something back to that might be like, great, well, they need 7,000, sales price is 330. So if they can't afford them, we'll take 337. Or we'll do half and take 333. Good guy, bad guy. So two people working together. So sometimes you'll get this from like a husband-wife team. This has happened. I've dealt with this. And they'll take on opposing roles. So one appears friendly and considerate while the other behaves in a difficult or aggressive manner. Think of the typical car salesperson, good guy who says his manager, bad guy, won't let him reduce the price any further. I've definitely ran into this, and sometimes not always husband and wife. Sometimes it's like the lead agent and the buyer's agent, or something similar. This recommendations for counter tactic says call them on their game. You can even say, come on, you're not going to play good guy, bad guy on me, are you? If it continues, then attribute what the bad guy says to the good guy. Since they are a tag team anyway, this likely will diffuse the tactic because you now have two bad guys. So kind of telling on the other person like, oh, well, this person says this, so I guess this is going to be the way it is. And that might help them show their true colors. I've had it like sometimes, I don't know if they're playing dumb or if they're actually dumb sometimes, but they'll be like, well, why can't it be done this way? And you're like, this can't be done this way because of this is how it works. And that can kind of help diffuse that situation as well, or release you from that situation. All right. Position. So this goes on a lot, so much of negotiations, guys. It's just asking questions. Ask more questions to see what people really want, where they're coming from, what they're actually willing to give. For example, say you represent a seller who wants to close in 30 days. If a buyer wants to close within 60 days, ask your clients, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, you are representing a 30-day closing. What is important about closing in 30 days? And then if they become defensive, so my goal is to let the buyer know why this point is important to you. So it's not like on you, but you're putting it on the other party. In this market, it's likely going to be the other way around, but they want more time to go find a house, whereas buyer wants to get in there because they're so excited, or if they want to be in by a specific date.
Or how long does closing normally take?
30 to 45 days. Okay. Unless there's something odd or specific. And then again, knowing when to walk away. So sometimes like we don't want to force people through transactions that don't feel good and like leave a horrible taste. So sometimes it's okay for it not to work out. If your buyer's really truly stuck on something, or the sellers are truly stuck on something. Or sometimes like if the seller is going to feel like they're being nitpicked or like really upset by the whole process, like it's okay to say no. And then the buyer can choose how much it actually matters to them. And in this market, if you have to go on the market, back on the market, that's okay. You might actually get more. So yeah, knowing when to stop pushing, reading those nonverbal cues or verbal cues, asking enough questions to know where is someone's limit.
Does closing start when the inspection happens? So like you put an offer in, like when you said 30 to 45 days, is that including when the buyer puts an offer in? Is it like from that point, or does closing technically start when the offer has been accepted and the inspection's been done and you've kind of moved past that point?
Yeah, so it's called an escrow period, and the escrow period is from the day your offer gets accepted to the day the loan funds and records and the house is officially yours, and that entire process is typically 30 to 45 days.
Okay.
The inspection period is just part of that process, but closing isn't actually until like documents are at escrow, you're signing documents, and it's closed when it's recorded and funded.
That's at the end, obviously.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Let's skip over this. Has some scenarios for you to read through that can be fun. Some are not super current to our current market. But let's do the fun little final questionnaire on page 26. So when do two possible occurrences of negotiation happen during the contract process? We talked about more than two, but this is the first common two that we talked about.
Negotiations and inspections.
Yep. So like the first making our offer.
Excuse me, appraisals and inspections, not negotiations. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. Yep, appraisals are a common one, inspections are a common one, and then right up front with our offer is a lot of that negotiation as well. And then name some common points of negotiations. So any other ones that we talked about besides those three.
Price.
Anything else?
Repairs.
Yep.
I mean, isn't anything kind of negotiable? I mean, you could even negotiate like the title company you're using, or if you want a new roof, I want a new roof. Well, I want to use this company.
Yep. Absolutely. What's staying in the property and what's going, the earnest money amount, all of that. Perfect.
Does the listing agent generally choose the escrow company, the title company?
It is very common for them to list a preference. And so most of the time when you are competing, it's probably recommended to just go with whatever they've said their preference is going to be, because you don't want that. To me, like, that's not worth it at all to come back and have that not accept our offer or need a counter offer because of something like that.
Right. Okay.
If they did list one and you can't get a hold, like say they didn't answer when I called before writing the offer to see if there's any terms or anything, and so I can't ask them what their preference is if it's not listed in the MLS, then I'll go ahead and fill it in. But I try to make sure it's just whoever they want to use.
Okay, thank you.
Technically in Oregon, the buyer does get to decide, right?
There's mixed opinions on that. It's a neutral third party, and sellers absolutely will fight back on it. Perfect. All right, any other questions? There's some scripts at the end of your workbook as well for you to practice and go over. And learn for objections and negotiations. Perfect. Well, that's what I've got for you guys. Let me know if you have any additional questions. If you ask for the recording today, I'll definitely send it to you. And then, yeah, have a great day.
Awesome class. Thanks, Mara.
Okay.
Yeah, you are welcome.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mara.
See you guys again tomorrow.
Bye.